Hey,
There he is.
I made
What's
it.
up, dude? Good to see you.
You too, man. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm catching up with some old friends here. It seems like we have a good crowd already. So thank you for doing this. It's getting easier every time I do this. The first time was very nerve-wracking because I used to just do like live and talk by myself, and then I did like 100-something episodes. But to do this live, but we're all friends though. So
Live,
yeah,
in real
we're
life.
live.
Oh my goodness.
It's like that Bill O'Reilly thing. Fuck it, we'll do it live. That's what we're doing tonight. So thank you for being here.
Awesome.
For those of you who do not know, this is Steve Giralt. He's a good friend and a mentor, and you do some pretty epic stuff. So why don't you give yourself a little intro for people that may not be familiar with you?
Cool. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you, Rob, for having me again.
No worries.
Last
Cheers,
time
man.
it was just voice. Now here, yeah. Now in
Woo!
reality. And so, yeah, I'm a director, visual engineer, photographer, DP, kind of all those things, but basically a director in real life.
Right.
And I'm based in New York City. I run a production company called The Garage. We do all tabletop, mostly food and beverage and product kind of videos. We have a lot of robots. We have a phantom camera. We have red cameras. We have like basically the highest end, most fun toys you can imagine.
Yeah.
Making videos with is what we have. But
For
right
sure.
now I'm in this dirty basement of my house upstate where I have none of those things, but I'm still
Right.
trying to make content.
Yeah, for sure. And you just started it's a new project here on education. I'm trying to pull something.
Yeah, it's called The Garage Learning.
Yes, the garage learning. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the questions. But tell me a little bit about this. You're kind of, I know that you were originally going to have a Kickstarter for it first, and then it kind of, which is
We
funny
are
because I
still,
was building
yeah.
up my YouTube studio right before this, and then it kind of happened. And I was like, oh shit, like it's weird. The universe is like giving me a sign or something. I'm like, yeah.
So no, we were still definitely planning the Kickstarter. Basically, we're starting an education company based around the work that we do, and more. I mean, like I went to school for advertising photography, so I learned photography and the basics of lenses and cameras and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't learn about robots. I didn't learn about all the crazy stuff that we do now, and never mind film and video. So
Right.
basically, the idea of the school is going to be teaching people from the ground up all these skills, like from the film school stuff all the way to like microcircuits and Arduino and pneumatics and everything you can imagine, how to make your own LED lights,
Wow.
because we make our own custom circuits and LED lights and stuff like
I
that.
love that stuff you do. I was so impressed the first time I saw like your little like boards with the LED lights, and there's so much like.
Yeah,
I feel
so
like
it's
I'm
crazy.
electrocuted. Like when I first went to your studio, I literally felt like I was going to get electrocuted. There was so much, like so many robots and wires.
Oh, it's low
around.
voltage. It's low voltage. It's okay.
Yeah, for sure. But it was intimidating. I remember like we were having lunch and I was looking around like I was waiting for like a robot to move or something like that. Still the best Greek food I've ever had, by the way. To this day, I've been.
Oh, amazing.
What's the name of
New
that
York's-
place? What's it?
I forgot what it was called. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's jump into some questions, and then we can kind of get back into it. But we got some great questions sent in, so thank you to everyone who sent them. The first one here, who was your first client? This is a good one to get the ball rolling.
All right.
My wife
The
keeps telling
first
me.
ever client that I've ever
First
had
ever client, and
in my
then
whole life.
that's good. And how hard was it to get the first one?
Okay. Well, my first client, if I think back, way back, I was just out of high school, and this magazine called Florida Leader magazine. I went to school in Miami, in
Right.
Florida, so they wanted me to take pictures of some kids that were like valedictorians or something like that went to the high school that I went to, and that's it. That was my job. They were like, "Here's like $200." And this was like the days of film. So I think in $200, I had to like,
Right.
I set up like a background in my dad's engineering warehouse, like that had like car grease and forklifts and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Wow.
And I shot these two kids' portraits. But then when I moved to New York, my first client was Severe magazine, which is a food and travel magazine.
Right.
And that one actually was way easier to get than I thought, which is, yeah, you've probably never heard that in your whole life.
I was like,
but
oh,
basically-
I totally know it. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so basically I came to New York City to assist other photographers was my plan after college. So I had made a portfolio in college that was all like travel photography based, and I dropped it off at Severe magazine. That was the only magazine I dropped it off at.
Wow.
And then 2 months later they called me for a job. It was like, wait,
Wow.
that's crazy. But it was shooting some portraits at a restaurant in New York City, which is obviously different than what I do now most of the
Right.
time.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great question, and I think that we just recently had Justin Genak on the show, who's the CEO and co-founder of Working Now Working, and it's a company that helps to get people jobs. And he says that you always look at people kind of like from either like the middle or like the starting line. They're in the middle of their career, they got 10 years under their belt, but they always fast forward like kind of through the beginning. And I think that people lose sight of the fact that everyone starts somewhere. And even if you're just at the outset of your journey, it's like everyone has to go apply for that first job, and that's kind of just a compounding thing.
I think the one piece of advice would be that not enough people take that chance. Not enough people go and drop off that portfolio or find that photo editor or find that executive producer and like, hey, how you doing? I'm Steve. And a lot of people have a hard time believing in their work enough to take that chance. And I say, take the chance. The worst thing you could do is be turned down, and that's not so bad. You're just exactly where you were before.
Yeah. And I think that like the market will also let you know too. There have been times where I've made, done a thing with a podcast and you can just kind of tell like it wasn't hitting like you would. So then you just go back to the drawing board and recalibrate. You don't turn that, you don't shut the whole podcast down. You kind of just pivot based on the real-time feedback that you're getting. Hey, not for nothing, but this sucks. So stop doing that. Just change it,
Right, exactly.
But be on the path. Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Here's another great question coming in. Secondly, regarding your Instagram story with Steve Giralt for the Garage Learning, what is his method on, sorry, I suck at reading out loud. What is his method on tackling the pricing of each project? Thank you in advance.
So yeah, we're working on actually a post to put up on the Garage Learning in the next couple of weeks about this exactly. I think that's probably one of the number one questions we get is, well, A, can I work for you for free? And B, how do I price my work? And it generally speaking, if I wanted to give you a quick answer, I'm going to give you some more details too, though, is as much as you possibly can and more. Like, always aim for the sky, and trust me, the client will bring you down. You don't need to bring yourself down. And I think most people start way too low. We're like so scared, like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm worried. And I'm like, as long as you know you're going to put your heart and soul into that job and do everything you physically can to do it right, no matter if you're making money or not, I think aim for the skies. But to break it down in a slightly more mathematical way is first, we need to calculate your cost of doing business. Like, what is your real overhead? Like when you calculate what you need to live and food and marketing and retirement and savings and a family and all these things, like how much, and then also calculate, oh, maybe I'll shoot 5 days a month or 10 days a month or whatever it is. So then, at the very basic need is for each day of shooting, you need to make, let's say, $1,000 or whatever it is just to break even. So then you want to make sure you're charging double that at least, or triple that, or quadruple that, or as much as you can. So for us, we add up our crew costs, our studio costs, what the stylists are going to be, what the robot rentals are. And once again, charge for all your gear. That's like the big thing to do for sure. Like if you own a camera, you have to buy it, right? So the client should rent it from you. So basically add up all your hard costs, like what you really paid for things. And then you add a margin and money on top of that. And eventually, after you do some more jobs and you go through this process with clients a few times, you're a little more confident. Yeah,
definitely. I've had a similar experience DJing. And it's like, when I first started out, I was like, what's up?
No, Ricker.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure. I miss it so much. This is actually my DJing shirt I'm wearing right now. I steamed it and kind of came out into my living room. I'm still wearing sweatpants. It's all very sad. But same thing for me, when I first started out, I was like, I don't know how much to charge. And now when I'm going out, I'm thinking too, if somebody were to like dump a full glass of Pinot Grigio on on my DJ equipment tonight, like how much could I charge that I'd be like, no problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to cover your assets. Whereas if you're giving somebody a friends and family discount and all of a sudden you've been charging $200 and then you have to cover a major expense, you're shit out of luck. So make sure you're covering your own bases, and the same can be said about any field. So that's
and also doesn't hurt to reach out to other people in your industry. A lot of people will honestly talk about what they charge with you sometimes, or at least a ballpark, because they want to protect the market too. They don't want, let's say DJs normally charge $1,000 and you're coming in charging $200. Like they want you to charge $2,000 also, because then you guys are all kind of the same level,
For sure, absolutely. I love it. See, there's so many parallels no matter what you do. Question for Steve: how can somebody get started? I know this is a huge investment. This guy set himself up here, but it's okay. Still, where and how can you begin? A complete novice here. So start
taking pictures, start making videos just with whatever camera you have. I mean, that's I mean, that's like the baseline of what we're going to do with the garage learning is it's going to start from beginner, intermediate, and then advanced and like uber advanced.
Well, that Coke thing, the can
right.
thing that I put up, that's an iPhone, correct?
Yeah,
so
iPhone and just
iPhone
some
rig.
fishing line. That's it. That's all it was. You know, so literally anybody could do that if you spend the time to think through the process and what you could do. So, I mean, obviously there's certain things that are limited by your thing, but if you're starting from scratch, the world has so much information to give you, like on YouTube, on people like Garage Learning, what we're trying to do, which is like we're going to guide you from the beginning all the way to advanced. And that's why it's going to take a lot of time, and we're going to have to hire a bunch of people to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, when it clears up, I'll come. By the way, so you're upstate New York right now?
Yeah. We have a place up. It's near Port Jervis, New York.
Okay. Yeah. I'm from Suffern, so the Suffern line goes to Port Jervis.
Yep, exactly.
I love that area. That's not that far upstate. That's like
it's like 100 miles.
Right. That's good.
But it's a whole new world up here compared to the city.
Yeah. Beautiful area for when Okay. But people can't tell. Okay. Here we go. Got that one. And I think also too, just don't let the gear limit you. I think that there's a lot of great content out there by folks like Casey Neistat and your friend Peter McKinnon there, just about like you can really do some serious damage with your iPhone or whatever. I just earlier this year I had a 5D Mark IV, and I've had a 7D before that, kind of working my way up. And I use my iPhone all the time now because when you realize it's not about the gear, it's about the execution of whatever it is you're shooting with. Not to mention the iPhone and these cameras are great cameras, like in general.
Oh my God, they're getting
fantastic
great.
Cameras.
Yeah.
The specs on
the
these
super
cameras
wide
are
on my
fantastic.
iPhone 11 is like insane. Yeah. That super wide lens is awesome, and it's so tiny, and you can move it around. Like a Phantom camera is like this huge thing that like you can't move. That's why we use robots.
Exactly. I love it so much. All right, here's another question here. Kind of similar question. How did you get started? What would you recommend for beginners on how to get started? So let's just say like you want to start out. You want to prove to yourself that your long game is you want to be like what you're doing, visual engineering.
Sure.
Where would you start if you can go back, or how did you yourself actually start? That might be a better way to phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, I think realize that it's an organic process, and you got to start somewhere, and then eventually you'll get to wherever you want to be. You can't rush that process. You could try really, really hard. I went to photography school, and then I moved to New York, and I started assisting other photographers. Obviously, not every area in the world has, other people that you could work for, but you could try, intern or whatever it is. A lot of people, hey, if you're really driven and you're in New York City and you have skills that you can bring to the table, not just like, oh, I just want you to teach me everything. Like you actually have skills that you're bringing to the table, then I say, I'll maybe bring you on as an intern or something like that. So, yeah. But either way, let's say you can't do that. As much as it's a great way to go, I think.
Let's say
literally
find Port Jervis, and you can't.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's a challenge. I think to learn, you need community. You need other people to bounce your stuff off of, because if you're in your own little island, you don't know, is this good? Is this bad? Is this cool? Is this not? So I think either find online, like, forums or clubs or Facebook groups or wherever it is. And I think community is really, really important. And that, once again, something that we're trying to build into the Garage Learning. Because once again, in photo school, that was the best part. You had critiques. You put your work up on the wall and people said, that's crap. Or they said, that's really good. Or the teacher literally sometimes ripped prints in half because they were that bad. But no, so I think that's important. And then B is don't be scared to just shoot stuff. Get your phone out. Like I'm starting to give out homework assignments during this whole isolation phase we're in here of the world, and just say, hey, the other day my homework assignment is like shoot a routine that's part of your day. And for extra credit, if you want to push yourself a little further, shoot at the closest focus distance your camera has when you shoot this routine, and find a way to tell a story within that little box. So I would always give myself challenges, personal challenges, and I think the only way you're going to be self-taught is to teach yourself. And that's some of the challenge of that. Some people aren't driven in that way, and that's where a traditional university kind of class is good. But I think more and more people are realizing that if you just put in the time, I mean, that's the thing, it takes time. I've been doing this. I moved to New York in 2002. So that's a lot of years. And
for some context, I was in sixth grade. I'm now 28 years old.
Woo! Nice. Yeah. So
you're old, Steve. You're old.
And that's after going to college and being interested in photography since I was 16. So, just realize, just start today, and keep moving, stay positive, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be. If you give up, then obviously you're never going to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also just being, I always say get close to the sun. And this is all, kind of like half through like
Robinsons.
and half through, like David Goggins. There's all these inspirational things that I'm watching. But my advice was when I left school, I sucked as a designer. I didn't have this now it's easy to look at this podcast, and I didn't have that. But when I left school, I just said, who do I want to be around? And then get around those people, and then stretch the notions of what you think you're doing. You'll get honest feedback, and you can grow from that point. And I still, to this day, like just this week, interview those people on the show and just maintain those relationships, have those nuanced conversations, and stop going immediately for the ask. Because so many people get transactional because they want, they're hungry. They want to be just like you. And they're like, come on, I'm the hardest working guy, but like, what can you show for it? Where is your what have you made is going to be the, it doesn't matter how nice you are. Everyone's like, I'll work hard. I'll get your coffee. Like, it's not about getting coffee. It's about providing value and being an asset,
Right. And I think, along those lines is also important to remember a lot of people get really caught up in like the robots and the gear and the lights and the stuff. And it's like, you're a storyteller first. I mean, before anything, it's about storytelling. So I think it doesn't have to be the best technical story, but if you have a really good story, eventually you can learn the technical. But it's exercised both ways. You have to exercise your technical side, but it's actually almost more importantly, especially for a client, like they're like, oh, who is Steve as a director? They're not talking about necessarily my technical stuff. They're talking about how I tell stories about food and beverage. So I think a lot of people got to realize that you need to tell a lot of stories. If you look at like the Casey Neistats and like he just started shooting with his camera, like you just need to practice it and you'll get better.
Yeah, for sure. And then you'll just get that reputation, and you won't have to actively sing. Like the way that I know about you is when I worked at the Hershey Company, and I was going through all the different
Ron.
Stuff. Ron Burge, by the way, coming on the podcast later on this week. We're working.
Oh, awesome! Tell Ron I say hi.
I'll make sure we should all do like a Google Hangout kind of thing. Okay. But I remember that that's how I found out about you. I said, what's the coolest shit you guys got? Like, let's see it. Like, because I was totally enthralled in it. And when they showed me your work, it was so clear. Like there was an excitement behind it. There was a passion behind it. But more than anything, there was experience behind it. And that's what I always admired about you. It's like, this guy has really been honing his craft. And this is years and years of compounding learning. So it's just important to kind of get on that treadmill.
Right. Start moving. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, here we go. How do you think it will be transformed? Hold on. I have the screenshots here.
Transform.
Visual engineering, how will it transform within this decade?
Well, I see it's going to be easier for more and more people. I think there's going to be more tools that make it easier for people to do the stuff that we do. Like robots will get easier to use. They'll be cheaper. I think that there'll be people like us putting out information on how to do this stuff because, visual engineering doesn't really exist as an art form, like, I don't know, legally. I don't know how you would call it. Like, no university teaches visual engineering yet.
Right.
It is not
until now. Until
yeah. It's not necessarily a new thing though. It's been around. Like tabletop cinematography is the core of it, and that's been happening for a long time. Robots have been around for a long time. Did you have like an idol in that way? Like, was there some like Imagineering type character who you were just like, that I want to be that? Well, I always loved like Industrial Light and Magic and Lucasfilm and like the Marmalade in Germany and the work that they did. Because they were one of the first ones to use the robot. And in New York, Mario Godlutsky, who's an amazing tabletop guy. It's always good to have the people to look up to. Just don't get blindsided and forget who you are because just being who I am now, I see so many people that all they do is try to copy the work that we do, and it's like, okay, but once again,
I see it out in the world. It's so cool. I'm like, it's so obviously like a copy of it, but I have seen.
And we encourage it. We're like, hey, knock yourself out, and hopefully with the hope that they're going to make it their own. It's not going to just be, I'm going to try to copy exactly what Steve did. It's like, hey, it's like open source software. It's like take this piece, but then add your piece to it and make something new, and that's awesome. In my book, it's like that's how it should be more.
Right. Yeah, kind of knowing the value of your own product. I always like kind of joke around. Like one of the questions that I'll get, like if I go talk at like a university or something, is they'll be like, well, do you ever worry about somebody like stealing like your name? Like Meet the Creatives. Like, what if somebody took your name and tried to start the same podcast? Like I was like, you could call this like the Snuffleupagus podcast. I'd still be out here.
Right.
Like,
It's still you.
about
Yeah.
the person behind it.
Right.
Steal the whole format. Steal the like. Good luck. It's really predicated on the person, and like again, it's just like that compounding over time.
Right.
I would say like be willing to be bad for a very long time and reap the rewards of that in the long run. Yeah. Cool. All right. So based on a dream, I hope she's still in here. She joined in before. I was trying to find it, but I just found it. She has a couple questions here. We'll do it as like a speed round kind of thing. Okay. So base _on_ a dream. Shout out to her because she really helped me out with this. Okay. And then we'll get to some of the questions that are in here.
Cool.
Best way to get started on creating content. We kind of covered that. Does it matter? Great question. Does it matter if content is made in HD rather than 4K? Good question.
Not necessarily, unless the client requires 4K. You know,
what would be an example of that? Like if you're working with like a Hershey or a Pepsi, like why 4K? Just on the deliverable, on like.
Well, exactly. It's just that. Exactly. Like one of the first things, and this is actually just a good thing to point out to people. Like when a client's like, "Hey, Steve, how you doing? We want you to do this like Pepsi commercial, whatever it is." When we're trying to figure out how much to charge for that commercial, how many days it's going to be, and how much process is involved in that, one of the first questions we have is, "What are the deliverables?" As in, oh, it's 3 videos of 15 seconds that are 16:9 and 4:5 and 9:16, and you know we have to ask all these questions,
or
especially
like
when we're doing
was
the
like
post.
Times Square, and it was like 4 stories high.
Right, or exactly. So one of the questions in that is this just for social? Is this going to be huge? Do you need a 4K deliverable, or is it just 1080? But a lot of times with that, the more than anything, the reason we use 4K or 6K or 8K is because nowadays we're shooting a lot more often in a world where we have to do 16:9 and 9:16. So we kind of shoot as much as possible for the 9:16, and then we'll have this bigger, wider frame, and then we crop in for the, it's just
you would lose information in that case, right?
Yeah, because you have to crop in enough to get it, and you wouldn't have enough resolution.
Right.
But other than that,
it's funny how that's changed in our lifetime. That over time, like even as a photographer, like I wouldn't use like back in the day, like you wouldn't necessarily go for the vertical shot. You would want the landscape for the photo, but now I find myself my camera is like. It's changing the way that I use it, right? Exactly. All night. It's like this way. We
got to go back to Hasselblad with the square. That's really the way to go.
Yeah, exactly.
You can crop it whichever way you want.
Exactly. That's so cool. 4K, that's great. And then what would you say are the essentials for your kit? I guess like a lens or like a setup. Like what would be like an essential kit if you were at the outset of this journey? Like, what would you recommend? Like a 7D Mark II? What kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I would say.
I'm a Canon guy, as you can tell.
I could tell you're a DSLR guy all the way. I mean, and that's the big question: are you trying to do photography and video? Or are you really primarily trying to do video? Because once again, the tools, a DSLR isn't necessarily made to be the best video camera. Right. I like what I brought with me here upstate is the Blackmagic
I'm just
Pocket
broke,
6.
Steve. I'm not getting those Hershey checks yet. I'm not getting those big Pepsi checks.
Yeah. I brought upstate with me. The only camera I brought with me was the Blackmagic Pocket 6K actually camera, which is like a $2,500, $3,000 camera, I think.
Right.
So I think that's great because it could do like 120 frames at 1080. You could do, it has a nice dynamic range. It does a lot of basic things. I also have like a little Sony A7R, that's also a great little camera for both stills and video. We use it mostly for stills where we want to do shoot bursts. So it says it could shoot so fast.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think once again, my first real video camera was like used red Epic Dragon, so yeah, it was a great camera. It was like $15,000 versus like $40,000 because I bought it on eBay used.
Yeah.
And I think, once again, those are now probably like $6,000. So, I mean, once again, don't be scared to buy something used to start out with because realize it's not going to be your like camera forever, And I think if you spend money on glass, like my first video lens was a 50mm macro Zeiss CP2 because it's a lens I could use almost every day. Like invest if you're going to buy stuff. Yeah, buy this stuff that you could use on almost every shoot. And it's like your go-to. The macro, once again, I do a lot of macro, so it makes sense to me. For somebody else, that might be a zoom, like a wide zoom, like a 16-28 or whatever it is. And then one good light, when I started in video, I started making some of my own lights. I bought some, cheap tungsten lights on eBay too. And then eventually I started, I bought some like used Profoto HMIs, which like they don't make really so much anymore.
Right.
But I got like this really good deal on eBay. Obviously, I love eBay.
Yeah, me too. I love eBay for like weird reasons, but we'll talk about that later on. That sounds weird. I like to like buy things from like my childhood. I'm like, I don't have kids yet, but I'm preparing myself by using eBay. So I'm like going and finding like old cars I used to play with. I'm trying to like have my kid like live in this kind of like Groundhog Day thing where he lives my life. That's my plan.
Right.
Oh,
awesome.
God, so cool.
But yeah, so I mean, I think start with the basics. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like your phone could be your first camera. Get some sort of light. It could be like back here. There's like an umbrella light going on back here. It's literally
when you're starting off, it's usually continuous, right? That would probably be the easiest way to get things going,
exactly.
Like soft boxes and stuff.
Especially you could do stills and video with it, for the most part. But that's like a Home Depot LED clamp light like thing with like a $20 umbrella on it. And there's a lot I could still do with that light, and that's the thing. People think like, oh, I need to get the super RGB LED, like whatever. And it's like, no, buy some gels and a cheap light from freaking Home Depot and start making some pictures,
Yeah, for sure. I think also kind of like making a space where you can be creative, like I was talking about before this whole thing, I started making like a little like man cave in the garage. It was trivial and stupid until it wasn't one day. And now I have my own little like Casey Neistat type office thing with all my shit everywhere. And if I'm like, I want to make a YouTube video, it's all there. I think like if you're in a position where you saved a little bit of money, you've invested in stuff, make an area where you can use this shit. Because if you're not using it, what's
Right.
Exactly.
Seriously.
A lot of people have the best gear but never use it. So.
Right. And the super fun thing is like with the Garage Learning, we're gonna have kits that will send you, and you could make your own LED panel kits and stuff like that. So like some are like little LED panels like this size. So you could do that. And more importantly, we teach you. The reason that we send them to you as a kit and you put it together yourself is we want you to feel comfortable making your own lights. So we'll have hard lights, soft lights. We're going to have kits, but you could also just get the instruction on how to do it yourself. And then, the sky's the limit on what kind of shape light you can make. And once again, it's really empowering. Once you kind of
so
understand.
huge, dude. I'm so excited for you. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be really keep us busy. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really great. And I think that you're always someone that's really, from my view, you've always been someone who really cares about legacy. And, people are like, oh, like you talk to Steve Giralt, like he's, what the fuck? Like I'm like, reach out to him because Steve is a normal guy. And from the moment I met you sent the elevator back down. Like I probably reached out to you when at my limited time working at Hershey. I was like, you're the man. Come on my show.
People are surprised. Like we pretty much respond to every DM we get, unless it's like something
like
just
right
really
away too.
Dumb.
Right away.
Yeah.
I love
my wife doesn't enjoy it so much. Get off your phone. But it's all good. It's all good. Okay. It's worth it. We like the community,
Yeah, for sure. You're at a place now, and this is one of the questions: what clients are you looking for? I know that you've had some great clients. I personally know some of the people that you've worked with over the years. They speak very highly of you. I would imagine.
Hey, Greg.
Things are changing, but what clients are you looking for, and are there certain fields that you want to? Because I know you're predominantly in food, but
right. Yeah. So no, I mean I've been incredibly lucky to have some amazing clients that I work for. I mean we got way more. I got way more popular. Way faster than I thought I was going to.
You were on the kid and shit. I had to message you one day, like, what the fuck is happening, Steve?
But just in general, just like when I put out my first burger drop video 4 years ago, I didn't think people were gonna care at all about it. And they just it just blew up, and it was crazy. And it's more than anything, it's because that's
the burger drop, and then the s'mores was really
right after.
Right
after, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And wait, where were we going with this? Oh, clients. Yes, sorry.
Yeah, clients, sorry, my bad.
So no, I mean, there's no particular, client I want to work for necessarily. It's more the brands that want to push the limits of what they could do and get them out of their own comfort zone. I would love to revolutionize the way Red Lobster or Outback or these people do food advertising.
Yeah.
It's so traditional and so stuck in a certain way, and the brands like Hershey's and Pepsi.
Yeah, when I picture Outback Steakhouse, and I love Outback Steakhouse, and I love the brand. My first job is Outback Steakhouse. I just picture kind of like a pre-made thing being slid out, like a wooden board, coming to the table. I want to see a blooming onion, imagine an exploding blooming onion, Outback
Right. No,
Steakhouse.
let's do something fun. Yeah, let's
Giralt.
not just like show the dipping shrimp in the butter thing at Red Lobster again. Like, can we do that differently?
Right.
So those, I mean, the clients that come to me like that and really bring me into the creative overhaul of the brand are like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
exciting to me. Whether it's like somebody with like $5,000 or somebody with $500,000. I mean, to me, if especially they have a great product, you know, so that's even easier to sell and do cool stuff with.
Right. Like
You know, some
s'mores is
things
such
are
a
like,
fun brief. I can
here,
imagine
this is
just
like a
dude.
loaf of bread. I'm like, okay, there's only so much I could do with a loaf of bread, you know, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but still, we'll try our best.
Have you ever had one that you were surprised to be able to pull off and make it cool? Like
Often.
something they gave you a brief and you're like, what the fuck am I gonna do with, you know, eggs or whatever?
Right. Yeah. No, it happens actually more often than you would think. You know,
You
even
realize how actually
recently.
boring things are. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some things are like, oh, we just did this like bread job. Actually, that's why it's meant the loaf of bread. And I was like,
Right.
oh, it actually came out like really cool. And it was like,
Yeah.
because I was like, what am I going to do with this like processed thing? And it's like, oh, it actually came out cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that sometimes you kind of go in terms of from you know, you're talking about composition and all this stuff, right? And also about gear and the merger of those two things.
Right.
Like, for example, I'm having a Captain and Coke right now because I saw that Coke ad, and I kind of the fizzing and the sounds and the auditory, and it's very small, very like micro, right? But then you
Right.
also have things that are big in scale, and it's kind of like on the outside. When you're making those compositions, how do you make those decisions? Is it based on the brief? Is it based on what you're looking to accentuate, or?
Right. Yeah. It really depends on the brief. Usually, I mean, it's the client comes to me with a X idea, and they're like, here, this is what we want to do. And then with some clients, they're like, oh, but don't listen to that too much. Like, do whatever you think is going to be better.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, we know this is like an A. Can you take this to like Z? And I'm like,
Right.
okay, great. Next shoot, we'll bring it to Z. And they're like, oh, no, wait. Just like, let's go B, C, then D, you know.
Right.
Do
Do you work better with the
no.
constraints or with an open brief? Do you want them to be like, do whatever the fuck you want to do, or do you want them to be like,
I
work
like
within a
a
constraint?
little seed of a starting idea, you know.
Okay,
'cause
yeah.
Once again, they should know their brand and what they want to accomplish at least. And
Right.
and once again, I'll go through long phone calls with new brands I work with, like asking, like, I need to know what your brand is. Like, I'm not just selling chocolate milk, but I'm selling your chocolate milk. So what makes your chocolate milk different than the other chocolate milk? So, I mean, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into this and these treatments I write up and all this stuff that goes into, you know, landing on what the execution is going to be, which is like either a huge set or a little set or going on location or 3 robots or no robots or whatever it is.
Yeah. When you're doing kind of like, and I this is kind of how we ended up meeting, but I'm originally from the branding space and still very intrigued by stuff like that. Like, you know, like when I worked at Hershey, I was really fascinated with Milton Hershey as a person and all this different stuff, and kind of like learning the different like tenets of the brand, the history,
Right.
where they're going, what they're doing. What are you like when you're working with these clients? And you've worked with like literally everyone, it seems. But like when you're researching something like a Hershey or Tim Hortons or whatever, what are you looking for? And does the brand's actual story inform the composition of the work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, the brand story is actually a huge part of the work. Like, once again, I work for, which is funny because like I shoot for Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Tim Hortons. They're all competition to
Pepsi
each other.
and Coke,
Pepsi,
both of them.
Coke, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so obviously there's a reason why I can do that without causing trouble, and is that every brand speaks to their you know, their brand people, their consumers in a very different way. So I have to take that into account when I'm planning a shoot for a brand, and you know, let's say it's Mr. Peanut and Planters, like there's history there that I need to be aware of.
Right.
And there's also the times where you want to say, yeah, this is how you've shown your brand up to now, but like this might be a better way to do that, you know. So there are the points where you start questioning things,
Right.
And you know, what's gonna I usually try to push the limits on them, you know, like I've tried to push the agency and the client themselves to question their brand and make sure that they're right about it, you know.
Do you ever like freak them out? You ever go like too far? You ever just be like, go, it's, you know, it's like a big, because you're working with brands that are, especially like I know like from like the food industry, like, you know, like Kroger and stuff like that. These are companies that are primarily like financially led, and it's like, it's all about like how things are doing on the shelf and all this different stuff. Do you sometimes ever freak out these people in these boardrooms with these extravagant big ideas, or do they at this point they're kind of trusting your vision?
Well, yeah, luckily most people come to me now because of what we've proven that
What's
we can do well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, sometimes I do even freak out the creatives and the producers and same thing too, where they're like, they come to me with like this idea and this budget, and they're like, oh, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I come up with this like huge idea that's like 1.5 times their budget. And I'll be like, but isn't it a better idea? Like, isn't this so much better than what you want to do? And I have to sell it.
That's what I'm saying. You're talking to people that are like, like chief financial officers, and it's like there's these big campaigns. It's like, how do you justify? But the creative is so good, and that's
the thing. You have to sell as a director, and running a production company. You have to know how to sell why it's worth every penny that they're going to pay you, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you have to prove it. And when it comes, if you get that job and you sell them on this idea, you better deliver. There's or else you just don't get hired again. That's the thing.
So you
gotta put your money where your mouth is.
Wow, that's crazy. How do you get the right people to look at your work? Email them, hashtags on Instagram. You've grown this pretty. I mean, a lot of it is. I love posting your videos because the organic reach of them is so crazy. But how do you make these connections? How are you reaching out and networking to people?
Yeah. So when I started, it was just literally like going to Barnes and Noble, because I started in still photography. So I started shooting for magazines mostly. Then I got into catalog, but I would literally like Google and go to magazine stores and look through the masthead and find out like who's the editor, and then trying to figure out their email and whatever. And then from there, the next step was like I got a rep, because I was already working enough from doing basically. The only way you get a rep is if you already have enough work. Like they're not going to like magically be this person that makes your career start.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. You have to be at a certain point, right? Yeah.
Right. So you got to do that part first. So you got to do your homework and just knock on doors and mail cards in the mail and emails and Instagram, whatever. But now obviously the landscape's changed nowadays, and honestly most of the work we get comes from in some way Instagram. So for us, like I don't know it's as much about the hashtag or whatever. I think at the end of the day, once again, it takes time to build that organically. I mean, it took me a long time to get to like 10,000 followers. It took like years, I feel. Right. But then once you like put out just amazing work, people share it. That's the thing. Like that burger drop video I did, like I had literally like no views on YouTube, no views on Vimeo, wherever I put it up.
Right.
But people grabbed it, people put it on Reddit, like just the right person found it and they started sharing it. And if things are cool enough, people will share it for you. They'll do the work for you. If you find that you're trying too hard to get people to like listen, maybe you should tell a different story. It's kind of what I tell people. Or once again, beat yourself down trying and making sure that you truly believe in whatever you're trying to say, But so much work, like amazing work from amazing clients comes from people like, oh, I saw your stuff on Instagram. It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I've been fortunate through this podcast to meet some friends in Silicon Valley and in the tech space. And, I'm always asking like, come on, like what's the secret? Like, how do I make the algorithm work in my favor? And it's all for the most part predicated on scroll time and how long they look at things. Like people look at their likes and impressions are incredibly important, right? Because that's the numbers. Like men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But shout out Jay-Z. But when you're scrolling through something, like for example, like you're like this. I keep using it, and I don't know. It's probably just my Hershey bias here, but the s'mores, the burger drop. I've realized that content does really well because people are naturally intrigued by it and they're stopping and they're like, wait, the one comment I always get on Steve Giralt videos is, I can watch this again and again and again. That kind of behavior leads to more engagement and bigger followers. So people are like, oh, I got to interview this person. It's like, no, you got to make content that people like give a shit about. And you do that all the time. Yeah.
And what's going to, like we discussed earlier, it shouldn't just be you just throwing your stuff out to the world. Like it should be a conversation with the world. Like I put out polls, I talk to people, I DM people, I ask for opinions. I try to make it a conversation with my fans, because fans that know that you're there with them are more likely to share your work too and tell your friends about it and like root for you. I mean, I've had so many jobs that come from like, I love you guys, like fans that are just like, oh, I showed this to this art director that because he was asking like, oh, do you know somebody that does cool food videos? And they're like, oh, have you seen this? Holy shit, you know?
Right.
And yeah, I mean, and I didn't realize that at first. It took me a while. I was like, people were like, I hadn't seen somebody maybe in like 3 months, and like the first thing they say to me, they're like, "Holy shit, your Instagram's so cool!" You know, like because like this was still before I only had like 5,000 followers or something.
Right. It's been pretty crazy because I've been friends with you, I think like 3 years now, and in that 3 year span, I mean, it's just blown up. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
Let's try and get to some quick questions in here. Hi, Steve. How are you? I have a question. What kind of product is your favorite? Like drinks, fast food, sports, or fashion? Do you have favorite brands, favorite things?
I love beverage, and if I had to say anything, beverage is like, once again, I think that's probably why we get hired to do so much of it.
Yeah.
Like, I love the challenge of liquid because it's like, it's really hard to work with in so many ways and make it interesting, and lighting it and everything. So, yeah, you know.
How much of that is fake and how much of that is real? Like when you see like the Coke swirling and stuff like that.
That's usually real, yeah.
Are you a purist with the product? So like, you know, you always see these videos where it's like the cheeseburger and they cut the cheeseburger and they spread it and stuff like that. I'm sure your clients are probably like freaking out right now by me saying this, but how much of it is
no, it's not. They have legal departments to keep us in check. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But
whatever you can say.
No, it's for the work. The work we do is very much rooted in authenticity. And that's why we shoot things practically versus it being done on CGI.
Right.
So as much as humanly possible in the work we do, we use the real product. Not to say, okay, like let's say a shot for Pepsi.
Right. Every once in a while,
where the Pepsi, no, the Pepsi's gonna like swirl around like crazy, and it's gonna get foamy, and you don't want to see foamy Pepsi. We'll just flatten it out first. So it's real Pepsi. We just flatten it before we put it in. Like we try to use the real stuff because for the most part, clients don't want to be known for using like fake stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Not to say like a Subway sandwich can't be the real meat, but like pushed up towards the front of the sandwich so it looks really big. You know, this meat looks small, this meat looks big, you know.
Right. So. For sure. That's so cool. That's crazy. Do you have a personal favorite brand? Do you have like one that was maybe like a sentimental place in your heart, or are you
no, I couldn't say I have one particular.
Smart man. This guy falls for nothing. All right, let's see. One of my big dreams is to be a part of your team. Look at this. With what? Sorry, Christ. I should have never started something where I have a cocktail and then start reading it out in front of 80 people. And also too, this font is really small for Instagram. Get your shit together.
You losing? You need some glasses there, buddy.
I'm getting there, man. Coming up on 30.
I do. You're right. Where do I do it? Do I have my little goggles around here somewhere?
Oh, I have to get one of those T-shirts, by the way. One of my big dreams is to be a part of your team. Yeah. With what all qualifications do you look to hire? Can you please tell me?
Sure, that's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, because we get asked all the time, like, oh my God, I want to work with you guys. And the number one thing I say,
just having free lunch just for no
reason,
hanging out.
But the number one thing I say is like, what are you good at? You know, like that's it. Like, and to me, as somebody hiring somebody, is what you're good at something that we need help with? It's literally that simple. You know, like we recently, the last hire we have is this guy Riley, that's part of our team. He's doing some of our videos also, and Riley just started showing up. You know, he was a friend of ours. And he's like, I want to help out. I'm really interested. He's like, I'm really into electronics and microcircuits. I used to build my own drones and all this stuff. And this kid's was 19. And I was like, hey, we need somebody that knows microcircuits and soldering and all that kind of stuff. So once again, he happened to come at a time, and he also does really good video editing too. So like, once again, he filled the needs that we had at the moment in time. You know, same thing, Matt, my main rigger, Matt Huber. You should follow him also.
That's one of the questions. How many people do you work with? That's one of the questions on there.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So there's 5 of us total, including myself, full and part-time that are the constant garage team. Yeah. And then from that, we have freelancers, and then obviously some jobs could have 40 people or whatever it is. But the team members that we have, once again, it's a pretty small group. Everybody has a very clear purpose, you know, because they're basically trying to do things that I don't have time to do, or that they're better at doing than I am, honestly.
They've been working for so long, you don't want to, right?
Yeah, like Matt is so much more like so much better at doing certain things than I am. Like I'm a mess in the workshop trying to build stuff. It's like, well, see, look at this place. It's like it's a mess. But he is more disciplined and he,
but
he
you gotta
has
have
a
the
different
wall behind
process.
you. This is the pro move. You can't
Yeah.
see the mess here.
Yeah. So basically, it's all about hiring talented people to work together towards a goal. It's not just about me. It's about hiring other people that are doing that same thing.
When I look at your videos and I see like those robots and they're like moving around and stuff like that. Like the one that comes to mind is the Heinz video where it's like Atlas.
Right. Yeah.
One of my favorites. How do you like tell the robot where to move? How do you spatially do that? And when you're doing these intricate flips and stuff like that, are these like, in layman's terms, is it like math equations? Are you taking the robot and moving it?
It's way simpler than that, you know.
Okay.
So like the Bolt and the other.
Tell me there's hope, Steve. Tell me
there's hope.
For a
there's
dumb
hope.
person
Even
like
you.
me.
Do you know how to play PlayStation? Like,
I'm great. I play Xbox all the
okay,
time.
so you could program a robot like that. Like
Really?
basically, yeah. You basically guide the robot. You're like, you know, here,
Right.
you know, looking at me, and then you say, okay, that's where I want to start the move. Then you're like, oh, okay, I want to end up like over here. So you say, hey, that's the next point, and then there's some settings you have to say on like how you get from point A to B, like whether it's an arc or a straight line or you know how you you know. But basically, it's that easy. Like some of these moves you could program really quickly. But it's funny though that you mentioned the Heinz job because that wasn't a real robot. That was home built, and Hershey's the s'mores was also home built. That was both built by Matt. So that's actually running Dragon Frame. So that's the software that you could buy.
Dragon Frame?
What was that?
What's
you don't know about
Dragon Frame? That sounds so cool.
So yeah, it's a good name. It's actually stop motion animation.
So it's gonna cut us off. So, but
okay, so it's actually stop motion animation software that can control motors. You know, so basically you could set up pan, tilt, roll, like all these kinds of things. Or for our case, it was like top cracker, middle cracker, marshmallow, whatever. And basically in Dragon Frame, you're just moving the motors and controlling that. So that's what we use for the Heinz commercial, was just like linear movers and motors and stuff. So once again, we're going to teach all this stuff in the Garage Learning, you know, so keep watching.
Yeah, plug the URLs. Let's get all in there before Instagram.
All right, here we go. So youtube.com/The Garage Learning is our new YouTube channel. Instagram.com/The Garage Learning is our Instagram. We'll be sharing lots and lots of more stuff new soon enough. From the YouTube page, you'll find we're going to have an Amazon store where if you want to buy some of the things that we use in our videos, you could buy them there. And it's like, oh, I need an air cylinder, you know, or I need like an Arduino or whatever it is.
Going broke.
So yeah, and then from there you can also find the Kickstarter, which right now we have just a landing page where you can sign up to be informed when the Kickstarter is live. We're trying to raise a bunch of money. Because we basically are going to hire 10 people day one to run amazing educational content for you. It's going to be way better than the stuff we're doing really homegrown from home right now. Right. It's going to be really thought out with beautiful graphics and beautiful, you know, methodology and keeping you on task with homework and all sorts of stuff. It's going to be a real education. It's going to be really fun. So yeah,
I'm excited. I'm going to do it too. I'm going to do that thing with the cans and my phone. I'm going to try it. Yeah. I'm going to have my wife help me. She's a little bit more detail oriented than me. Yeah. Exactly.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege. And anytime you want to come back, anything you want to promote.
Awesome.
Anytime, you're welcome back.
I'm here. I'm ready. All right. Thanks, Rob.
I'll be in touch.
And I want to send one quick signal to everybody. Stay safe.
Yes.
You know, like don't go out. Stay at home. That's why I'm shooting this basement, not in my beautiful studio right now. You know, it's not worth it, and we'll get through this together.
If we could be together right now, we would be. I would be happy to go to his office.
Exactly.
We're doing the hard thing, but we're doing the right thing.
Exactly. So do that. And stay creative.
Thank you so much, man.
You know? All right. Thanks, guys.
All right,
All right. Bye.
Bye.